The vast, endless expanse of space lay before them, an infinite sea of stars that stretched beyond comprehension. The crew of the Vanguard stared at the view screen, their faces illuminated by the soft, pale glow of distant stars. Captain Aidan Hale, a tall man in his mid-30s, sat in the command chair, his eyes narrowed in concentration. His dark hair was ruffled from a long shift, and his uniform was wrinkled from a lack of rest. He tapped the armrest in thought as his mind raced through the data they had received. "Report, Lieutenant Fisher," Hale said, his voice calm but filled with a quiet intensity. Lieutenant Mia Fisher, his second-in-command, was busy at the navigation station. Her fingers flew over the holographic controls with an ease that betrayed her years of experience. A sharp-featured woman with short-cropped brown hair and piercing blue eyes, she turned her head slightly to meet Hale's gaze. "We're getting something, sir. A distress signal. It's weak, but it's coming from a derelict ship, looks like a cargo freighter. No life signs detected." Hale's brow furrowed. It wasn't uncommon to find derelict ships in the vastness of space, but a distress signal? That was strange. Most ships would be self-destructive by the time they got to this point, a relic of some forgotten war or a ship lost in time. A distress signal this far out could mean anything: dangerous pirates, a trapped crew, or worse, an alien presence. "Where's it coming from?" Hale asked, leaning forward. "Sector 67B. About 3 light years from here," Fisher replied, eyes scanning the information rapidly. Hale's gaze shifted to the holographic map on the wall. Sector 67B. That was an area known for being outside of regular trade routes, isolated, and often forgotten. It was a spot most captains would avoid, particularly with the rumored instability in that part of the galaxy. Pirates, hostile alien species, and rogue factions had all been rumored to roam there. Still, the Vanguard wasn't just any ship. It was one of the most advanced warships in the fleet, equipped with the latest in weaponry, shields, and tactical systems. No one would dare to challenge it, not even the most determined of pirates. Still, Hale couldn't ignore the feeling gnawing at the back of his mind. "All right, set a course for Sector 67B, get us there in 20 minutes, he said, straightening up and looking around the bridge. The crew, all highly trained specialists, had already gone into action without needing further orders. Fisher was already plotting the course, while Ensign Harper manned the weapons console, and Chief Engineer Tanya Blake began checking the ship's systems for any irregularities. "Captain," said a voice from behind. Lieutenant Kira Tran, the ship's communications officer, approached Hale, her expression serious. "Go ahead, Lieutenant," Hale replied, his voice steady. "We've got a funny feeling about the distress signal." "The encryption isn't standard," Tran explained. "It's been tampered with. It's not the usual distress beacon signature you'd expect from a freighter in trouble. I've never seen anything like it." Hale felt a sudden chill run through him. "What do you mean? Can you decrypt it?" Tran nodded, her fingers dancing over the control panel. "I'm trying, but it's sophisticated. Whoever sent this signal knew what they were doing. It's not just a malfunction or a simple distress call. I want full diagnostics on it. If it's a trap, I want to know," Hale ordered. "You got it, sir," Tran replied, quickly working on the encryption. The minutes ticked by in tense silence as the crew prepared the ship for a potential encounter. A sense of unease filled the bridge, but no one dared speak of it. Captain Hale stood in front of the view screen, watching as the stars sped by. He couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. There were too many unknowns, and that was never a good sign in deep space. The Vanguard cut through the darkness, moving swiftly toward its destination. There was a moment of eerie calm, an overwhelming sense of isolation, as though they were the only ones in the universe. The stars around them seemed dimmer now, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. "Captain, I've got it," Lieutenant Tran suddenly called out. Hale spun around to face her. "What have you got?" "I've decoded the message," Tran said, her fingers still moving over the console. "It's a distress signal, yes. But there's something else embedded in it. A pattern. It's She hesitated for a moment, as if choosing the right words. It's a call for help. But not from anyone we'd expect. Hale's pulse quickened. Not from whom? Tran looked up, her eyes wide with concern. From a race we've never encountered before. And they're asking for humanity. The words hung in the air, thick with meaning. The crew exchanged confused glances. Who in the universe would be calling on humanity for help? Hale walked up to Tran, his mind racing. Are you sure? Can you give me more details? It's cryptic, Captain, but it's there. A species we've never encountered, speaking of an ancient pact and needing heroes. It's strange, but it's definitely human, Tran explained, her voice barely above a whisper. And there's something else, an urgency in the tone. It's not a request. It's a demand. We're supposed to act now. A tense silence descended over the bridge as Hale absorbed this new information. A demand for humanity's intervention, from an unknown race? The possibilities were staggering, and the implications were unsettling. The last time humanity had been called to intervene in something they didn't understand, it had led to an intergalactic conflict that still left scars on the human race. All right, we're going in, Hale said, his voice steely. Prepare yourselves. We may be walking into something we can't understand. But if someone or something needs our help, we'll answer. It's what we do. The crew nodded in unison, each of them quietly preparing for the unknown. The Vanguard was humanity's mightiest ship, and Hale trusted his crew with his life. But even the most seasoned veterans knew that space had a way of throwing challenges at you when you least expected it. And whatever awaited them in Sector 67B, they would face it head-on. As they neared the coordinates of the distress signal, the ship's sensors began picking up unusual readings. Energy fluctuations. Distorted gravity fields. And then, in the distance, something large and dark appeared on the view screen, a hulking ship, half destroyed, drifting aimlessly in the void. It was like no freighter Hale had ever seen. Its design was alien, unlike anything the humans had encountered in all their years of space exploration. That's it, Fisher muttered under her breath. That's the source of the signal. Hale leaned forward. All right, take us in. Let's see who, or what, is calling for help. As the Vanguard closed the distance, the hull of the derelict ship came into sharper focus. Its blackened, battered exterior seemed to tell the story of a battle fought long ago, and yet there was an undeniable energy emanating from it. The ship was alive, somehow, even in its broken state. And as the Vanguard came within docking range, the real mystery of the situation began to unfold. Captain, you need to see this, Lieutenant Tran's voice broke through his thoughts, her tone now full of awe and something more, fear. Hale stepped up beside her, his eyes locked on the display. And as he looked, his heart skipped a beat. Across the dark expanse of the derelict ship, massive letters, glowing faintly in the dark, began to form. A name. It was human. And it read, Vanguard. Captain Hale stood frozen, staring at the glowing letters on the derelict ship's hull. His breath caught in his throat, and for a moment, the entire bridge seemed to go still. The letters flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls, as if the ship itself were trying to communicate. Vanguard, he whispered under his breath, the word carrying a weight he couldn't quite place. Lieutenant Fisher turned to him, her expression puzzled. Captain? Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Hale nodded slowly. Yes. I see it. It's impossible. His thoughts raced. The name Vanguard was not just a coincidence, it couldn't be. The Vanguard was their ship. His ship. This was the ship they were on now, a vessel of unimaginable power and advanced technology. There was no reason it should be showing up here, let alone emblazoned on a derelict ship in the middle of nowhere. Could it be another ship named Vanguard? Fisher asked, trying to make sense of it. Maybe an old model or something? Hale shook his head. No, that's not possible. Our ship is one of a kind. There's no other Vanguard out here, especially not in this sector. This is something else entirely. Lieutenant Tran's voice cut in from across the bridge. "Captain, you're not going to believe this, but I'm detecting an anomaly in the ship's signature. The Vanguard ship out there is using some sort of cloaking technology, but it's not human. It's not anything I've seen before." Hale's mind churned. Cloaking technology wasn't unheard of, but alien cloaking tech was an entirely different beast, more advanced, more dangerous. And if the ship had been cloaking itself all this time, there was no telling how long it had been drifting out there, unseen and unnoticed. "Shut down all shields," Hale commanded, his voice steady despite the swirling storm of thoughts in his head. "Bring us within docking range, but keep the distance. Let's see if we can get a closer look without getting too close to whatever that ship is doing." "Aye, Captain," Fisher replied, quickly adjusting the controls. The Vanguard eased closer, the hum of the engines reverberating through the ship as they moved cautiously toward the derelict. The tension on the bridge was palpable. Each crew member was aware that they were walking into unknown, potentially hostile territory. As the Vanguard neared the derelict ship, Hale stared at the distorted, jagged shape of the other vessel. It was massive, larger than anything he had seen before. The ship seemed to shimmer and pulse faintly as if it were barely holding itself together. The name Vanguard still glowed brightly on its surface, a constant reminder of the enigma they were facing. "We're at docking range," Fisher reported. "The other ship's hull is deteriorating. The structural integrity is minimal. We can dock without issue, but there's something strange about the way the ship is behaving. It's almost like it's still active, in some sense." Hale nodded grimly. "Understood. Prepare the team. We're going in." As the crew prepared for the boarding mission, a sense of unease settled over the bridge. Hale, Fisher, Tran, and a small team of specialists gathered in the airlock, each of them geared up with environmental suits and weapons. The mission was simple in theory: investigate the derelict ship, assess the situation, and bring back any valuable information. But nothing about this felt simple. They were about to board an alien ship that had been broadcasting a distress signal to humanity, a ship that bore their name. A ship that seemed to be alive, and whose origins remained a mystery. The airlock doors hissed open, revealing the dark, empty corridor of the derelict vessel. The gravity was weak here, the lights dim and flickering. A low hum reverberated throughout the metal walls. The team stepped out cautiously, their boots making muted thuds on the cold floor. A strange, metallic smell filled the air, an odor that reminded Hale of rust and decay. The ship felt dead, yet it wasn't. There was something about it, something inexplicably unsettling. "This is Captain Hale," he said over the comms, his voice calm but firm. "We've entered the derelict. We're moving to the control center. Stay sharp. We don't know what we're dealing with here." "Understood, Captain," Fisher's voice crackled in his earpiece. "We're with you." The team moved through the corridors of the ship, weapons ready. The walls seemed to pulse as if the ship were breathing, the low hum growing louder with each step. The ship's architecture was unfamiliar, alien, even. The walls curved in unnatural shapes, and strange symbols were etched into the surfaces. There was a sense of vastness in the corridors, as though this vessel was far larger than it appeared from the outside. "Any signs of life?" Hale asked, scanning the surroundings carefully. "No life signs," Tran replied, her voice quiet. "But the ship's systems are still functioning. Some of them, anyway." The team continued forward, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The deeper they went, the more they began to realize that this wasn't just an ordinary derelict. This was something ancient. Something that had been built long before humanity had even begun to explore the stars. They arrived at the control room, its door slightly ajar. Hale pushed the door open slowly, the air inside stale and thick with dust. The control center was vast, with rows of consoles covered in grime. Yet, there was still an undeniable presence of activity, as if the ship were merely waiting for someone to restart it. At the center of the room was a massive command chair, similar to the one Hale sat in on the Vanguard. It was surrounded by alien interfaces, screens flickering with garbled data. The chair itself seemed to beckon, almost as if it was waiting for someone to sit in it. "Is it safe?" Fisher asked, her voice tense. Hale took a step forward, inspecting the console. There was a large, glowing button in the center. It pulsed with an eerie light, as if inviting him to press it. The strange feeling gnawed at him, the sensation that this ship had been waiting for him specifically. "I'm not sure," Hale admitted. "But we need to know what's happening here. This could be the key to understanding what this ship is, and why it's calling for humanity." He reached out cautiously, his hand hovering over the button. It was like no button he had ever seen before, smooth, almost organic in its design. It felt alive. And before he could stop himself, he pressed it. The room shook violently, the hum escalating to a deafening roar. Sparks flew from the consoles, and the lights flickered wildly. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze, until a deep voice echoed through the room, booming in their minds. "The time has come," the voice said, reverberating with an ancient power. "The chosen have arrived. Heroes of humanity, your trials begin now." Before Hale could react, the room went dark, and the ship seemed to come alive around them. The walls shifted, the floor groaned beneath their feet. The ship was no longer just a derelict, it was a living entity, and it was awakening. "Get ready!" Hale shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "We're not alone anymore." And with that, the crew of the Vanguard found themselves standing at the edge of a new, unimaginable challenge. They had answered the call, and now they would have to face whatever awaited them. The ship groaned beneath their feet, the very walls seeming to shift and pulse as though they had a life of their own. Captain Hale's pulse quickened as the eerie, booming voice echoed in his mind. The words had been clear, deliberate, and powerful. "The chosen have arrived. Heroes of humanity, your trials begin now." "What the hell is going on?" Fisher whispered, her voice tinged with disbelief. She had been through countless combat situations, faced down enemies on distant planets, but nothing had prepared her for this. The ship was alive, and it was responding to them. "Captain," Tran's voice crackled in his earpiece. "The entire control room is changing. The systems are activating. This is no ordinary vessel. It's as if it's adapting to our presence." Hale turned to the team, his mind racing. "Stay focused. Whatever the ship is, we need to understand its purpose. It wants us here for a reason." The massive chair at the center of the control room shifted, almost as if it were inviting Hale to sit in it. A strange pull tugged at him. It was tempting, so tempting, to sit down, to take command of this strange new vessel. But he resisted. There was no telling what this trial was, or what consequences there might be. "Everyone, fall back to the secondary corridors," Hale ordered, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Let's regroup, keep our distance from the chair. We'll figure out what's happening before we make any moves." The crew moved quickly, their footsteps echoing through the shifting hallways. The alien ship felt different now, more sentient than ever before. The air was thick with tension, as if it were aware of their every move. Every step felt like a test, every glance a judgment. The walls seemed to close in on them, shifting ever so slightly, as if watching and waiting for something. "Captain, I'm detecting an energy surge," Tran reported, her voice filled with alarm. "It's coming from the core of the ship. The readings are off the charts. This ship, whatever it is, has power far beyond anything we've ever encountered." Hale's gut tightened. "What kind of power? Is it dangerous?" "I don't know, sir. It could be a weapon, or it could be some kind of energy source," Tran replied. "But it's not like anything I've ever seen. I'm having trouble analyzing the readings. It's almost as if the ship is shielding the core from detection." "Great. Just what we need," Hale muttered under his breath. "Fisher, take a team to the core. Tran, stay on comms with me. I need eyes on everything this ship is doing." "Aye, Captain," Fisher said, her voice steady as ever, though Hale could hear the strain in it. She knew the risks, as did everyone else. They were venturing into the unknown, and each decision could mean life or death. The team split, Fisher leading her group toward the lower levels, while Hale and Tran remained at the command center, trying to understand the ship's systems. As they made their way through the corridors, Hale's thoughts raced. The ship was far older than anything humanity had ever encountered. But the voice, the deep, ancient voice, had addressed them as if it had been expecting them. It was no coincidence that they had arrived. The pulsing hum of the ship grew louder, vibrating through the very walls. It was almost a heartbeat, steady and rhythmic, as if the ship itself were alive, breathing. Hale had never experienced anything like this before, and the sense of foreboding only deepened with each passing moment. "We're getting closer to the core," Fisher's voice crackled over the comms. "The walls here are different. There's something carved into them, symbols, patterns we can't make sense of." Hale felt a chill. "Is it a language? Can you read it?" "Not exactly," Fisher replied. "It's unlike anything I've seen. It's almost like the ship is speaking to us, but in a way we don't understand." Hale nodded. "Keep moving, Fisher. Get to the core. We'll catch up when we can." Meanwhile, Hale and Tran had been scanning the control systems of the ship. "This is insane," Tran muttered, fingers flying over the glowing alien interface. "The ship's core is stabilizing. This could be a signal of some kind. But what's it trying to tell us?" Suddenly, the air in the control room shifted. A loud, mechanical whine filled the air as the floor beneath them began to shake. Hale grabbed onto the console to steady himself, his heart pounding in his chest. The ship was reacting to something, something had changed. Then, without warning, the room was flooded with light. The walls around them glowed, and the central screen lit up with a blinding white intensity. Hale squinted against the light, his eyes widening in shock as the screen flickered and came to life. A hologram materialized in front of them. It was a figure, tall, regal, and draped in an elaborate cloak. The figure's face was obscured by a shimmering, translucent mask, but there was no mistaking the presence of the being. The very air seemed to hum with energy as the figure spoke, its voice deep and resonant, the same voice they had heard before. "Humanity," the being intoned, its tone rich with authority. "You have come. The trials are set. The galaxy calls for your champions." Hale swallowed hard. The being's words were clear, too clear. It was talking directly to him, to humanity as a whole. This wasn't just an alien encounter, it was a summons. A test. "We didn't ask for this," Hale said, more to himself than to the hologram. "We don't know anything about your trials. You will learn." "You must," the figure replied. "There are forces in this galaxy, forces that seek to unravel the balance of existence itself. Your kind holds the key to stopping them. The trials will reveal your worth. Succeed, and you will be granted power beyond imagining. Fail, and all will be lost." The hologram faded, leaving Hale and Tran in stunned silence. The room was silent for a long moment, the only sound the hum of the ship's systems. Hale exhaled slowly, his mind racing. "Power beyond imagining," Hale repeated under his breath. "Is this what it's all about? A test? A war for the galaxy?" Tran turned to him, her face pale. "Captain, what do we do now? This is bigger than anything we've faced before. Are we supposed to fight, whatever this is?" Hale felt a deep weight settle on his shoulders. The stakes had just been raised, and they were no longer just exploring an abandoned ship, they had been chosen. Chosen for something far greater than they had ever imagined. "I don't know what this test is, but I do know one thing," Hale said, his voice firm. "We don't turn away from challenges. Whatever this galaxy is throwing at us, we face it. Together." Just as he spoke, the ship lurched again, this time with a violent shake that nearly threw them off their feet. The lights flickered and then, without warning, a loud bang echoed through the ship. The walls trembled, and alarms blared across the entire vessel. "Captain!" Fisher's voice rang out through the comms. "We've found it. There's something down here. Something, alive." The ship was awakening, and its trials were about to begin. the air in the derelict ship felt heavier now, laden with a sense of inevitability. The moment the alarms began to blare, it was as if the entire vessel had fully awakened. Every wall seemed to vibrate, each hum of the ship growing louder as if it were calling them to its heart. Hale gripped the console tightly, his knuckles white, but his mind was already racing. The hologram's words still echoed in his head: "Succeed, and you will be granted power beyond imagining. Fail, and all will be lost." The pressure was mounting. Whatever lay ahead, it was bigger than just their ship. It was the fate of something much more vast, and they were standing on the precipice. The ship was alive, and it had chosen them to face its trials. But why? And what would these trials demand of them? "Fisher," Hale called over the comms, his voice strained. "What's your status?" "Captain, you won't believe this," Fisher's voice crackled, filled with awe and fear. "We've found the core. But there's something inside it, a creature, or a construct, I can't tell. It's massive. It's waking up. And it's hostile." Hale's heart skipped a beat. "How hostile?" "Very hostile, sir. It's moving toward us, fast. Get out of there, now!" Hale barked, adrenaline surging. He turned to Tran. "Can you get us a read on where the threat's coming from?" "I'm trying, Captain," Tran said, her fingers flying over the controls. "But the ship's systems are locking me out. It's almost like it doesn't want us to know what's coming." "Doesn't matter," Hale said, his voice sharp. "We're going to have to fight our way out if it comes to that. Prepare the team for combat. Fisher, keep us posted." "Understood, Captain," Fisher replied, her voice now steely. "We're not backing down." Hale's crew moved swiftly, the tension on the bridge palpable. Every person knew that the stakes were no longer just about survival, they were about something far larger. This ship, this Vanguard, it had become a symbol of something that could either save or destroy the galaxy. And if they didn't succeed in these trials, there would be no one left to protect it. The ship shook once more, a violent tremor that rattled the very bones of the Vanguard. Hale clenched his jaw as he watched the screens flash with chaotic readings. The core's energy output was skyrocketing, and whatever Fisher and her team were facing down there, it was clearly connected to the pulse of this vessel. It wasn't just an obstacle, it was part of the trial itself. "All teams, stay in formation," Hale commanded. "We're going in to help Fisher. Prepare to engage whatever comes our way. We can't afford to lose ground now." The team moved into action, grabbing weapons and making sure their armor was secure. Hale's mind was focused, his every thought on the mission ahead. He knew that the only way to navigate these trials was to use everything they had: courage, ingenuity, and unity. "Captain," Tran called out. "There's a breach in the lower decks. The creature, whatever it is coming up through the core's access points. We need to act fast." Hale's eyes narrowed. "Get to the lower decks. We need to stop it before it reaches the main corridors. Fisher's team will need backup." The crew moved at once, quickly descending to the lower levels of the ship. The halls were growing more and more unstable, flickering lights casting eerie shadows. They had to move quickly; if they didn't, the creature, whatever it was, would be free to wreak havoc across the Vanguard. As they reached the access point, Hale could hear the sounds of battle in the distance. The screeching, crashing, and hissing of an unknown creature filled the air. The Vanguard had turned into a battlefield, a place where only the strongest would survive. When they rounded the corner, Hale's eyes widened. Before them stood a massive creature, its scales glinting like metal, its eyes glowing with a cold, predatory intelligence. It was like nothing Hale had ever seen, part machine, part living organism, its body a twisted combination of both. It had broken through the core and was making its way up the ship, each step sending tremors through the hall. "That thing is huge," Fisher's voice came over the comms, breathless but calm. "We need to take it down before it reaches the heart of the ship." Hale nodded, the plan forming in his mind. "We'll need to hit it hard, hit it fast. Focus fire on the limbs, try to disable it before it can get to the control center. Tran, can you hack into the ship's systems?" We need the ship on our side. Tran's fingers flew over the console, trying to regain control of the ship's systems. I'm on it, Captain. But the ship is resisting me. It's like it's protecting the creature. Great, Hale muttered. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. The ship itself is against us. But they had no choice. They had to fight, and they had to win. The creature's roar echoed down the hall as it lunged forward, its claws slashing through the air. Fisher and her team opened fire, their weapons tearing into the creature's thick hide. The sound of the impact was deafening, but it didn't seem to faze the creature. It was too strong, too relentless. Hit it with everything you've got. Hale ordered, pulling out his own weapon, a high-powered plasma rifle. He joined the fray, firing at the creature's legs to try to slow it down. But the creature retaliated with terrifying force, swinging its massive tail and knocking several crew members to the side. Hale ducked behind a pillar, taking a breath as he regrouped with the others. Fisher, get in position. Tran, are we in control of anything yet? I've bypassed some of the ship's defensive systems, Tran reported. But it's a delicate balance, Captain. The ship wants us to fail. I'm pulling up the schematics now. There's a central core that might be the key to disabling this thing. Where is it? Hale barked, scanning the creature as it continued its rampage. Tran pointed to a nearby terminal. Right there. If we can get to it and shut it down, we might be able to stop the creature from regenerating its armor. Without hesitation, Hale made a snap decision. Everyone, focus fire on the creature. We're going to push through and take out the core. They charged, weapons blazing, targeting the weak points in the creature's body. It roared in agony as they tore through its flesh, but it didn't relent. Finally, they reached the core, a glowing, pulsating mass at the center of the beast's back. Hale gritted his teeth as he fired directly at it, hoping for a direct hit. The creature screamed. A violent surge of energy shot through the walls, and the ship itself seemed to recoil. For a brief moment, everything stopped. Then, in a blinding flash, the creature collapsed, its body twitching as the lights flickered out across the ship. Silence fell. We did it, Fisher said, her voice ragged but relieved. It's down. Hale exhaled slowly. They had won. They had passed the first trial, but Hale knew this was only the beginning. There would be more tests ahead, tests that would push them to their limits. But as they stood together, bloodied but unbroken, Hale realized something. They had answered the universe's call. They had shown courage, unity, and strength. And no matter what came next, they would face it together. The galaxy might be in peril, but humanity had proven, once again, that when the universe cried for heroes, they answered. And they would never stop answering.